Hey guys, and welcome to JD's Story Corner. Today we're going to be talking about 5 true horror stories that actually happened to unsuspecting Redditors. Enjoy the video. Number 5. The Intruder. Redditor Mom Says I'm Pretty says, "This is a true story time. I was about 4 or 5 years old and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room, but I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hall, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the first floor, and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer, and my mom had a window open in her room, which was directly behind the bed, above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night and remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was in the doorframe of my mom's room. Her door was open and you could partially see into my bedroom. This was strange because our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3 to 4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the doorframe and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window. Again, we were on the first floor and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed and we were able to start screaming for help and someone called 911. The police came, but didn't see any signs of forced entry, only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man must have exited that way. The strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night, with the deadbolt and the chain lock. About a week later, she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again, but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. Later, the Redditor made an edit that says, "Just to clarify, our apartment was on the ground level, so my mother didn't hurl me into potential paralysis, just a 3-ish foot drop." Number 4. The Banging Door. Redditor Hobsit says, "Alrighty, this is the late 80s, early 90s. I was around 6 to 7 years old. I'm at home with my sister who was 14 to 15 at the time. We grew up in a small Texas town. Everybody knows everybody. We were home alone this particular night, and my folks let my sister babysit me frequently. We always got along due to our age gap. Anyway, it is about 8 p.m. in the winter, and deserts get pretty damn cold. So it's dark, and we're in the common room since that's where the TV was, watching 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or hard copy or some shit. Those 1-hour news pieces on CBS that chronicle large crimes in depth. Trafficking, murders, kidnappings, and the like. Basically a gritty Lifetime special. This one was a typical story. A guy next door that was quiet went on a rampage in his next door neighbor's house, mutilating them and kidnapping their younger daughter. Well, the thing about our house common room is the door leading to the backyard was a large glass door on a wall of floor to ceiling windows. Nothing but blackness beyond it unless you have the back light on, which we did not. The front door is on the other side of the room with a small entryway. This is a solid door, so you cannot see what is beyond it, with a glass storm door on the outside of it. About 45 minutes into the show, they are talking about the ongoing manhunt for this crazy guy, and bam, bam, bam! Front door bangs like crazy. We jump the fuck up and scream like banshees. Dead silence now. The only lights on in the house are the kitchen down the hall from the common room we were in and the light from the TV. We start thinking something on the porch. We had some planters and a rocking chair out there, had simply blown against the door. This was West Texas. Crazy strong winds out that way. Well, a minute or two of silence and us holding each other post-adrenaline overdose passes. Just when we were about to declare everything is safe, we heard the storm door on the outside of our front door close. Fuck. Someone had to have opened that door to be able to bang on the front door like that. Shit. We were both frozen in the middle of the room on the floor where we had been watching TV. My sister calls out over the TV and turns it off. It was an old TV, so you had to turn that metal dial to switch it off, which it does with a mildly loud thunk. Now it is just us in a room dimly lit by the kitchen light down the hall. I do not remember how much time passed with my sister and I frozen, still crouched by the now off TV, but we kept making eye contact, then looking at the front door. I remember this part vividly. I'm on my knees, sitting on my feet, and I turn around to look at the back wall of windows and glass door. We hear and I see the back knob turn. It was locked on the knob, but not deadbolted. It rattles slightly as if someone is gently trying the handle. Neither of us make a sound, just held our breath. Then, bam, 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 bam! Loud as all hell. Someone is trying to force the door open, just jerking it back and forth. The whole wall of windows is vibrating violently, and I can see with each jerk of the door how my slight reflection gets fuzzy, then clear, then fuzzy. My sister flips her shit and screams bloody murder. I'm still frozen on the floor. She gets up and basically drags me into her bedroom, slams the door, throws her mattress and anything she can in front of her door. Thankfully, she had remembered the phone, one of those ungodly heaven beige plastic long metal antenna portable phones. We still had to direct dial the sheriff there, and in her panic didn't remember the number. She just hit redial on the phone. It was one of her friends, and she tells them in broken gasps that someone is trying to get into our house and needs to get there right fucking now. The profanity sticks out here more than anything else. Who knows? Young brain. I'm curled up on the floor and cannot stop shaking. We don't hear anything else until we see the headlights of my sister's friend and her parents driving up to the house. We never did find out who was at the door or why. There were no signs of anything happening but a couple of scuff marks on the bottom of the back door that we could not remember if they were there beforehand or not. Nothing like that has happened to me or her since, but for damn sure we never forget to lock a door after that. Number 3. PTSD Nightmares. Redditor Trenches007 says, I have some stories that scare the heck out of me, but I'm not sure how you all will react because it's not your messed up brain. Shortly after graduating high school, I woke up one morning and found my father dead in our living room. I tried giving CPR, but he was already dead by the time I came out. I suffered PTSD from this event and would regularly have nightmares where I would be walking to the living room and I would realize what I was about to see and I would start screaming before I even got there. And then I would wake up screaming. This lasted about a year, where I was not a functioning human being. I would stay awake for days to not experience the dream over again. Then, one day I had a mental breakdown in the middle of the day. According to my girlfriend, who is now my wife, I tensed up like I was having a seizure for about an hour straight. In my mind, I had to keep living out that morning over and over. But I would stop myself before I went into the living room with a primal scream, which my wife said I would do in real life as well, until I finally let myself go into the living room and see my father's dead body. After I came out of it, I did not have the nightmares anymore. Flash forward to 2005. I joined the army and I'm in Iraq. I was leading a convoy and we had intel that terrorists were sending children out in front of convoys to get them to stop and ambush them. As I'm driving, a kid runs out about 300 meters in front of my vehicle and I froze. We had orders to run over anyone in our way, and I was dreading having to make this decision. My truck chief is screaming at me to floor it, so I do, and the kid dodges out of the way at the last second. When we get to the next FOB, I go to get some sleep, but I'm still disturbed about the moral choices I made that day. As I fall asleep, I have a nightmare that I'm driving again, and the kid jumps out in front of me. This time, I run him over, but then stop feeling the horror of what I did. I go to check the body, and as I go around to the back of the truck, I get that same dread I used to. Somehow in my brain, I remember my old nightmares and assure myself it's not the same. As I get around the truck, I see my father's dead body, and I go straight into primal screaming again, only to wake up screaming and running. I am at a full sprint as I wake up, and in a part of the FOB I don't recognize. I thankfully haven't suffered these nightmares anymore, but I'm still in constant fear of my own screwed up mind. Number 2. The Farmer. Redditor Tucker48 says, I've told this story before in another thread, but it fits here. My mother-in-law was a very funny and cool woman. She and my wife were really close and sadly, she passed away when our son was about 4 months old. Flash forward a few years, we live in an old 1930s era craftsman house in Pasadena, California. Our son is about 3 at the time. I was giving him a bath one night and he starts looking over my shoulder, not at random stuff, but at something. A moment passes and he asks me why Grandma calls Mommy a funny name. I asked him what he meant, thinking about he was talking about my mom. He then says, "Why does Grandma call Mommy?" My mother-in-law's nickname for my wife. I was really set back by this. My wife and I never used the nickname. It was just what her mom called her since she was a baby. I asked him where he heard that. His reply, "The farmer told me." I asked him who the farmer was and he replied, "His friend." I tell my wife this story later and she of course reduced to tears over the whole nickname thing. We both know there is no way for him to know this and we just kind of marvel at it. Flash forward to the next weekend and my son is playing in his room. My wife is at work in retail and I'm home. I worked MF. I hear him start talking like he's having a conversation. He says things like, "No, yes, I don't know that," and then some laughing. I go into his room and ask him what he's doing and he says playing. I ask with who? He says, "The farmer." At this point, I'm already thinking about the fucking Exorcist movie and Captain Howdy. It's a little unsettling. I ask him where the farmer is. He says he left when I came in. The fuck? So my wife gets home and I tell her this and now she's just as weirded out as I am. We have no idea what to do. And figure if it happens again, we'll do something. A few days later in the middle of the night, we both overhear our son saying the following. "Grandma says you and I can't be friends anymore." My wife and I go to check on him, both of us a little freaked. He's just sitting up in bed. I ask if he's okay, and he says yeah. Grandma says I can't play with the farmer anymore. He never once mentioned the farmer again. Not ever. He's 13 now and doesn't remember any of it. We do. Number 1. The Neighbors. Redditor Abistigmata says, "These stories still stick with me. I grew up in a house on Long Island in the town of Brentwood. It was a quiet town for its location. My dad worked as a taxi driver at the time, which meant he would usually end up coming home early in the morning and I would greet him. So it's Saturday. I'm watching cartoons and my dad comes in and I run to say hello. My mom hears us from the bedroom and says, "Hello, honey. Don't go in the pool. It's not ready yet." Me and my dad think, well, that's weird. It's 6 a.m. We weren't gonna go in the pool. But just brush it off and he goes on to tell me his usual stories of the crazies he picked up throughout the night. We then realized it was Saturday and my mom was at work, and it was only me and him in the house. The voice sounded just like my mother. Fast forward a couple of weeks. We had just moved into the house, and my new neighbors come over to welcome us to town. It was the two mothers, two sons, one my age and one a little older in 10th grade. Two little girls, one blonde-haired girl and a shy brunette girl that didn't talk. We get to playing some soccer. However, the little brunette girl is nowhere to be found. The curious little kid I ran around the property and I find her playing in the woods, a dangerous area for little nooblets to be exploring. She asks me to come play tag, but I decline, wanting to get everyone in on the game. The reactions of everyone as I asked for them to join us was puzzling, along with the response from the mom, "We only have one daughter." Turns out, a small brown-haired girl drowned in the pool 10 years ago. The mother soon passed away from a heart attack. The following 5 to 6 years was terrifying for everyone. I have a huge amount of stories from this house. Just message me if you want to hear more. He later posts again saying, "Alright, I'll share another one. So I've been living in this house for a little while now. Pretty spooky things have happened, but nothing as bad as when I first moved in and met the neighbors. I'm coming back from school one day and if I recall correctly, I was in the 7th grade and my parents and brother were all out. So I go in, fix myself up some Dunkaroos and pizza rolls, and watch some TV. I love Dunkaroos so much. I get bored so I go outside and play some basketball by myself, and not soon after, I hear the door slam. The yard was enormous, but it was a small house with big windows and white transparent curtains. I just presumed the sound was my brother getting back, so I look through the pale curtains and I can make out a figure walking through the house. However, I could not guess who it was. As I get to the driveway, you have to wrap around the side to get into the house. I noticed that there were no cars parked, which meant no one was home. Maybe my brother got a ride back? But where would he leave his Altima? Surely he'd never leave it to the side. Approaching the front door, I realized it was locked. I had left it open specifically so I could get back in. As I wriggle the doorknob, I hear hurried footsteps head to the door, slowly turning into a sprint, in which they stop right at welcome rug on the inside. I just stand there petrified until my brother pulls up. I tell him what happens and he gets his iron bat from practice and we make our way into the house. Not a single fucking thing in the entire house. Nothing was disturbed and had been left the exact same when I left it. However, that's not the most disturbing part. My brother didn't use his key to get in, which meant the door was open all along. This was the last we've ever heard from him. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below. Comment more if you want to hear more stories like this in the future.